The upper-lower split has been a tried and true split that has been ran for decades. And it is something that has worked for many, many people and has brought many great physiques to the world. And I have had a great experience with the upper-lower split so far. And today I kind of want to talk about how you can use the upper-lower split if you're within your first few years of training, and kind of what are some pros and cons that I have found with this split. So, some positives that I have with this split is that the sessions aren't too long. They're, for me, like between, I would say even 45 minutes to like maybe an hour 15 at most. Kind of depends on how much volume and what I'm doing for the day. So for me, that's really good. I've done things in the past, like I've done full body before, and I've spent, 2 hours on a session. And, like, it's not that you can't build up the work capacity for 2 hours, but like you're not putting the same effort in at an hour and 45 minutes that you are at 45 minutes. It's just not happening. So like for me, getting around that hour time is like a sweet spot for me, because I like to train hard. I like high intensity. So I like to keep the sessions shorter. Which, going off of time, is my volume is also feels just right with upper lower. Since I'm, splitting up my body into two halves essentially, compared to full body, I was doing like twice the volume. So like you just like even with training full body for a long time, I still like almost never got full. I never fully recovered from a full body because it was just so much volume in one session. I felt I needed like 2 or 3 days of recovery before I did another one. Another good thing that I like is the pump is kept in a general area. So, obviously if you're training lower, your legs, your whole lower body has a pump. If you're doing upper body, obviously your whole upper body has a pump. Obviously there's more muscles in your upper body between your arms, basically your arms and your torso. But even still, it's like the feeling of just having an upper body pump just feels great, and having just a leg pump feels great, rather than having your whole body have a pump, which really it just fades away over time. You really can't like sustain a full body pump. It's just not going to happen. Another great thing for me is that training 4 days a week just seems to be a sweet spot for me for recovery, at least for right now, for the volume that I need and the frequency that I need. It just, for me, it's a sweet spot. It allows me to train really hard. I have a day between most sessions. I only double up 2 of the sessions, and then the other 2 are spread out, which is it's perfect for me. Another good thing too is that you can order your exercises however you like. What I mean by this is like you can do like an antagonistic split if you want. So if it's upper, you can go chest then back, or triceps then biceps, whatever. And then along with that, you could also do supersets if you want, or giant sets. So like that's something I do. I'll superset my chest and my back, and then I'll actually giant set my arms, my triceps, biceps, and shoulders. So I'll do a giant set. So that's also how I can get my session times down, is by doing things like that. So for me, that's just something I Like if time isn't an issue for you and you like spending time, that's fine. Or you don't like supersetting, that's fine too. But it at least, the upper lower split at least gives you the option to do that if you want to. Not that you have to. Some downsides that I see with the upper lower is once you become more advanced, so kind of looking into the future, obviously I'm not there yet, and when you're more advanced and you need more volume, and more lifts, the sessions will run longer, especially for the upper days. They'll probably get up to like 90 minutes, which that's not even too bad, but you know, at that point you might think of just adding an extra day or splitting it up differently. Another con for let's say a beginner starting out, or you've been at it for a few years, if you can't train 4 times per week, because the upper lower really works best if you can train at least 4 times per week. If you can only do 3, it can work, but your progress is just going to be delayed. So, obviously it's like one week you're doing upper, lower, upper, and the next week you're doing lower, upper, lower. Why it's delayed? It's because every week you're only hitting one of those muscle groups once. So like if it's a lower, upper, lower, all your upper muscles only got hit once that week, which obviously 1 time a week frequency, it's just not enough. And you'll make up for it in the next session, but that's why I say it'll be delayed. So I could go into detail on how to program for the upper lower, but I already made a video on programming for beginners. I think I titled it. So I would just watch that video, because everything I talked about in that video on how to program, I was referring to using an upper lower split. So I would just watch that to get details for how I would program. But how I would use this split moving forward, past your beginner phase of training, or really even intermediate phase, basically once volume gets too high and sessions feel too long for you, you pretty much, it's still a good split to use, because you still have 2 days to play with. So if you were at 4 days, I'm going to assume you want at least 1 day of rest, so you have 2 extra days to play around with. So the first thing I would do is on your fifth day, pick a muscle group or 2 that's something that you really want to bring up, because at this point you've probably been training long enough, and let's say you have a lagging muscle group or 2 and you want to train it a little more, but you think you don't want to just put it in your normal 4 times a week session. You want an extra day for it to hit 3 times per week. So this is great, because you just add an extra day, pick a 5th day and train that muscle group or a group of muscles. And then really you can even cycle out muscles, right? So let's say you do a phase where you're trying to bring up your arms, and you just train your arms on a 5th day, and you do that for a while, and then you reach a goal or whatever, and then you're like, oh, I really want to bring up my shoulders and traps, right? And then that 5th day is now training shoulders and traps. And that goes for anything you want to do, your legs as well. You can kind of use that 5th day for that. The second option would be to run 6 days per week. And for this, I would do, just alternate each one. So just be upper, lower, upper, lower, upper, lower. Now you're at 3 times a week frequency for everything. So definitely don't jump from 4 times a week to 6 times. Experiment with that 5 times, see how your body feels, before you jump to 6 times per week. That might be too much for some people. Just depend, again, that can be a whole nother video on how to program for that. But basically I would keep volume moderate to low for sure, just because you're hitting everything 3 times per week. But you know, even with doing that, it might just still make sense to break up the muscle groups differently at that point. I just feel like that frequency, I think for me at least, that would be too much. But it's something you can certainly try. I mean, people have definitely done it before. You know, you just got to play around with volume per session, and you might even have to play around with intensity. You might not be able to train as hard as you possibly can, just because your frequency is going to be high for everything. So yeah, at that point, it just might make sense to split up your muscle groups differently. Like I would split up your upper day. So it would be like you'd have a lower day. The first upper day is, you know, chest and back. And then your second upper day is arms and shoulders. Something like that. It could be different. Or you can even mix up some lower into upper as well. You can kind of, you know, that's at that point you've been training long enough, you can kind of you know what you need, you know what you need to do. And it can be more customized, but yeah, I do think that the upper lower is great for if it's day 1 or even if it's year 2 or year 3. I just think this split can just be milked out and adapted to you for a pretty good amount of time. I'm currently using it. I've been using it for probably the past year. And I mean, the past year is when I've gotten like the majority of my progress. The first like 3 years of my training, I was kind of all over the place. But I did a lot of full body. I started seeing some progress with full body, but then when I switched to upper lower, it for me it changed. It changed a lot. You know, it just everything I've talked about before. Kind of like there's just a lot of cons with full body, and maybe I'll make a separate video on that, because I also didn't program it right either. I just tried to do like as much as I possibly could in one session and try to do that like 3 times a week, and it was just too much. So there is a way to do full body, and maybe I'll make a video on that, how to do that the smart way. But if you really want a split that's more like, I don't know, lifestyle friendly, and you don't want to be in the gym for 2+ hours doing full body, then I think the upper lower split is great, and it can be adapted over time and customized with adding a day, obviously adding volume to your sessions, adding lifts. Like it's just a great spot to start and build off of, and you can last with that split for so long. Yeah, so I didn't talk about other splits like the bro split and other things like that, because I think for beginners, just don't do that. Just don't even do it. I don't really want to get into why right now, because I would just ramble for too long, but just either full body or upper lower, you got to train everything at least. Here's a golden rule, I'll say. Every frequency has to be at 2 times per week. So a bro split is only once per week. You're just not going to go very far on that if you're a natural lifter. So I'll leave it at that. Yeah, that's all I had. So think about that. I'm sure a lot of people already use the upper lower split. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.